This week on the latest episode of The Big Show, it's the 4th of July holiday weekend, and we have officially reached the midpoint of 2021. Show correspondent and Black Film and TV critic Wilson Morales will join Charles Kirkland Jr. and we'll discuss, among other things, Bill Cosby being released from prison, Lovecraft Country not getting a season 2, plus in theaters this weekend, Zola, Summer of Soul. Wilson, hold up your shirt. And Tomorrowland. We'll have all that and more on episode 461 of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. Hey, good afternoon and welcome to the latest episode of The Big Show, Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. I am Tim Gordon and I am joined by Charles Kirkland Jr. What's going on, Charles?
Hey, what's happening, Tim? Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
And welcoming back to the show after, has it been 2 or 3 weeks? 3 weeks? I don't lost count. The man who I refer to as one of the best entertainment journalists in the country, not just African-American, mainstream, Wilson Morales of BlackFilmandTV.com. All joking aside, gets it done. That brother, man, I don't know how the hell he does it. Do you clone yourself? Is it like a 2 or 3 of you who just kind of
sometimes because when something goes wrong, I have to blame it on William, you know.
And you have.
And if it's not William, it's Wilbur. You know what I'm saying? You know, if it's not Wilbur, it's Wiley. You know what I'm saying?
Well, brother, welcome back to the show, man. You've been out, man. You know, Tribeca was going on for a couple of weeks. I know screenings and junkets are now starting to come back.
Physical release. Physical reading, physical junkets.
Yeah, man. So welcome back, bro. We missed you over the last 2 weeks. We had Julian was here last week. He did his best Wilson. He was pretty good.
Well, Julian Roman?
Julian Lytle, man. Not George, not the Julian who's already in the CCA, but the new CCA Julian.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that have been in the group now.
A lot of rookies now. A lot of rookies. Got to start to know them.
Well, speaking of rookies, Charles Kirkland is a rookie in the CCA now.
We got to haze him. You say, hey,
oh, wait
Charles,
a minute. You haven't been already? You haven't been already? I thought I was going through
like, I can be like, Charles, I need this review done. You say,
and that would be fun if we could do that.
You got a better seat than me? Give it up.
Right. Yeah, man. Come on, man. But no, Charles got his.
You got to sit back, chair, table 105.
I know. Charles got his letter about a week and a half ago. So he is number 480 in the group now. So, but yeah, man, we got a lot of stuff going on, man. And Wilson is back. Wilson, we're going to start with you, man, because before I get into my stuff, man, I want to find out what you got going on in entertainment, man.
You know, there's a lot that's going on. Obviously, as we see, theaters are now back in play. We knew that was going to happen once Fast 9 hit the theaters. Last I checked, it's going to start. It's already passed the 100 million mark faster than the other films have had, which is what, you know, everybody wanted it to. They expected it to. You know, I think it's going by the end of this weekend, or it'll be like at 126. You know, you've got a few films in theater, but also making their debut on platforms like the Tomorrow War, which is on Amazon. You've got Summer of Soul, which we'll talk about, which is on theaters, as well as Hulu. But Fox Searchlight Pictures is making a big effort to, you know, hopefully have people to see it in theaters, because it's in probably, I think, 700 theaters. And that deserves to be a big screen. So when you're looking at a concept film, you want to see it on a big screen. Right. You know, you've got that happening. Obviously, you know, as you mentioned, we've had some news, you know, of the entertainment world, TV and political. Sometimes it's hard to talk about the political stuff because you don't know, you know, it's sort of like you may feel one way, but you don't want to say it because, you know, you can get judged by Twitter. However you may feel. You mean like
Felicia Rashad this week?
I was going to say,
You're saying no matter how much good you do in the world, one little instance can all of a sudden, the haters come out. You know, no matter, and it's sort of like, the way I feel is like, you know, you feel your opinion, so be it. Now, granted, so you sort of like said, better to say nothing. But then again, it's sort of like, you know what? You know, go for broke, you know, for somebody like Felicia, hey, at the end of the day, if she gets canceled, she's been, you know, she gave us 60 years or so. Like they did Rita Moreno in The Heights. You know, the lady's 90 years old. It's like, you know, you now find time to, you know, just because they don't like what society is saying, or, you know, some people, I don't want to say society, some people, you never know how they, you know, they want to cancel them. Like, really? It's like some
That's
people have their
actually a
opinions.
great analogy, Wilson. That's a great analogy because that's exactly what happened to Rita Moreno, stepping in to try to defend Lin-Manuel Miranda, and
I just
didn't
say
go
it's like
well.
the lady's 90. So like for whatever 60 years, Rita Moreno this, Rita Moreno that. We love Rita Moreno. The minute she defends Lin-Manuel, it's sort of like, oh, we don't like her no more. I'm like, really?
Pretty
You know,
much,
and
man.
look what they did about Felicia. You know, there were talks about, oh, should Howard revoke her deanship? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You know, it's like,
it is, but it is scary though, man, because again, you know, we're in an opinion business, man. You know, whether it's us doing reviews or whether us kind of chirping in,
but there's experts, and then there's people who just want to say it to get an audience. You know, in some areas, not all, depending on the situation.
But Wilson, I mean, watch this. If something happened to you, right, and I'm your friend, or Charles and I are your friends, and we came up to defend you. Now, here, I'm not even going to finish that. I got a better one, which makes a lot more sense, which will hit closer to home. You and I were on the phone one Friday afternoon in 2017 when all of the furor over Nate Parker and the birth of a nation happened. Remember that conversation, Wilson?
2016. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. So you remember how I remember you going out. I think you did a piece on, was it Variety or the Hollywood Reporter?
Did a piece on the Hollywood Reporter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you wrote an op-ed piece, and I know I was writing stuff. And hey, man, you know, sometimes sometimes there's a wave, Wilson, and you just got to get out the way. And you know, you do you know, we both came forth along with other people, said our piece, and then after that, it's like,
that's why sometimes it's like, you know what? I don't have an opinion. Let's move on. You say?
Yeah, I agree. So having said all of that, man, you know, when you get done and we talk about that I literally have no opinion. Or let me rephrase that. I do have an opinion, but not one that I will share regarding the release of Bill Cosby. Bill
was
Cosby,
it positive or negative? It's like you just leave it alone. You never know. Either people are going to like what we say, or people don't like what they say. So I was like, you know what, leave it alone. That's not my, you know, it's like, hey, you know, let's move on. It's like, stay neutral free, you know.
I was told in the house this weekend that I am to have no comment on the Bill Cosby release. Charles, what about you? Because me and Wilson are saying our piece.
Well, when we get to the Bill Cosby thing, I guess I will have a comment that I will make.
Oh, no, we there now, man. Watch this. You see Wilson leaving. Look, we there right now. I just told you, I have no comment.
Well, when he was released, I posted it on DC Film Life, and I just kind of innocuously said, I'm just going to leave this right here for all you to make your own opinions and digest. But, you know, for me, it was horrible to see Bill Cosby go to jail when he's got Harvey Weinstein still out there and walking scot-free. So, you know, to me, there was kind of a racial component to me that didn't sit well. Now, I'm not saying that he's innocent. I don't believe whether he's
bottom line is
guilty.
Money buys you the best.
Get out the way, Wilson. Let Charles do Charles, man. Don't say anything.
Guilty. I just think that he was thrown under the bus of this whole thing. And hey, look, he did 3 years on a 3 to 10 year sentence, so he should have he was eligible to come out anyway. So I'm happy to see that he's out. I'm glad to see that he served some of his time. But, you know, he was unjustly convicted in this, and that he made a plea deal, and they went back on the plea deal and convicted him against his word, and that's why the Supreme Court let him go. It wasn't a just thing. So, you know, I'm not saying anything as far as against what he did, but I'm just saying the conviction itself was unjust.
Yeah, everything goes back to the original DA who gave him that blanket protection, you know. So like, and you credit his lawyer for coming up with a hell of a blanket protection. Like what? It's like say what you say, and nothing. And I repeat, nothing will ever come of this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they reneged on it, and you credit his lawyers for fighting 3 years because, like you said, he was going to get out eventually, early, but he got his whole thing vacated, so it's not on the record. It's like boom, he can get his money back, if he wanted to. I feel sorry for the ladies who are still pending, civil suits against them because now they have nothing to work on, because they can't even use the previous testimony on it. So, they're back to square one, and that's going to be much more difficult now, so like, I feel sorry for them because obviously there are some ladies who got paid off, or paid settled, not paid off, settled. And then there's those who are still waiting. But, I certainly don't want to spend the whole time talking about this. You also have No Sudden Move out in theaters, Steven Soderbergh's movie, which is playing in theaters, as well as, actually, no, it's playing only on HBO Max. And it features, obviously, Don Cheadle, one of his rare lead roles, as well as, what else we have? We also have, is that somebody's background?
I don't know who that is.
That wasn't me. I'm just sitting here. I'm listening to y'all. I haven't said a word in like a minute and a half. I'm like,
and then you also have Craig Mums, who had passed away earlier this year in one of his final performances. So,
got it.
there's a lot going on. But Tim, back to you.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, you guys had a lot to say for people who like, man, I said I have no comment, and y'all kept on going, so I said I'm gonna let it go.
Yeah, I never said I had no comment.
Okay, cool. Also this week, which I do have a comment on, and I was not happy to hear, but it's typical, was the announcement last night from HBO that despite the fact that Misha Green had been working on some story ideas, and I guess had come up on one that I think she wanted to pursue for a second season of 10-time Black Reel Award for television nominee Lovecraft Country. It was announced last night that HBO is going to be moving on from that show, which repeats a pattern that they've had over recent years. Shows like, was it Big Little Lies? I think that was the title of it. Watchmen was another show that was.
Well, Big Little Lies got a second season.
Well, it got a second season because it was also based on a first season that was based on a book, and then they kind of did a second season. So that was the template that I think Lovecraft was going after because they had used the book. I forget the author's name.
More so the success.
Well, no, I'm saying they had source material when they created season 1. And if they would have been moving forward with season 2, she would have had to create a wholly original new story. And I think that was the same thing with Watchmen, why HBO came back and went, nah. But, in one regard, I can't really speak for Watchmen, which I thought was a really, really strong television or limited series when they put it on. I rewatched the last episode of Lovecraft Country last night. And if you don't have a second season of that, they ended that with a bang. So if it doesn't come back, which it appears that it's not, that one season, those 10 episodes, mwah, that was great.
Well, we're going to find out this coming week how much it's rewarded by the Emmy committee because the nominations are going to be announced this week. And
wait, excuse me, sir. Did you just literally hear me say at the beginning that the thing was the most nominated show of the Black Reel Awards for television? It received 10 nominations.
Well, I'm talking about Emmys.
Okay, I'm saying you said we're gonna find out.
What I'm saying, like,
found out. Do not step over our African American achievement. Like, oh man, yeah, that's cool, but we're gonna find out what the Emmys.
No, but I'm saying, like, from a national perspective, because there's always a difference. Like, okay, the Black audience has its favorites, and rightly so. And now we're gonna find out just how much everybody else thinks of this show. Because I'm sure, and I haven't done the research to see that, like, how many of the shows that have been nominated and won a Black Reel, but it didn't replicate in terms of either nominations or wins when it comes to Emmys. And I'm sure there's a big disparity in terms of like, oh, this show won 10 awards, like a Queen Sugar, and yet got no nominations for Emmys, And so we'll see.
Expressed by Wilson Morales Only his own. We're building something, Wilson. That's my point. I think you're right. I will concede and say that when you're talking about major awards, we've always talked about what the Academy Awards do, or what the Academy Awards are, what the Emmy Awards are. But at the end of the day, man, I think that we now live in a time where you've got to consider that there are other groups that are creating things that understand that the mainstream sometimes will omit or not have the pulse of certain communities when they're making choices. Now, let's be honest. All three of us belong to the CCA, which is another organization that is not necessarily the Oscars or the Emmys, but it's highly regarded. And the awards that we give out, sometimes people raise an eyebrow and go, huh? So, everybody is building different award mechanisms or machines to try to ensure that there are voices and roles and performances that are acknowledged. And that was basically my point.
I think, but I also think that Wilson has a point as well, because we know how good Lovecraft Country is. We just want to see how does the rest of the world view Lovecraft Country. So is it really something that's universal, or is it just us?
Yeah, and then it goes back to like even ratings. You know what I'm saying? Like, how many times do we, we're all watching a show, but it doesn't, on a black level, but then it doesn't reach the scale or the metrics when it comes to like national ratings. While we're all talking about certain shows, and then like when the ratings come out, it's like doesn't even crack the top 15 on a national level. There's some shows that do, and then there's some shows that don't. So like that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, I can say that not everybody saw Lovecraft Country. A lot of people did to talk about it and let it trend and so forth. But the question is like, how much did everybody else see? At the end of the day, they're going to be competing with the mayor of Easttown, which a lot of people saw of all colors, and so like, so while people talk about, Lovecraft Country, there's Mayor of Easttown, there's The Undoing, there's Michaela Coel's show on HBO.
I Will Destroy You.
I Will Destroy You. So like the question is, I May Destroy You may measure up more than Lovecraft, but I think they're in different categories. So we won't know, And then some categories like just the recent BET Awards where they're combining movies and TV, which I think is totally unfair. When it was like, I don't think you should be having.
Yeah, but Critics' Choice does the same thing. They used to have
no. They don't combine. They don't combine films and TV in the same category.
I'm sorry, my apologies. I thought you meant like they combined them in the same show. Yeah, but in the same category is wrong.
Yeah, in the same categories. Like you don't throw in a Viola Davis for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom compared to a Journey Smollett, right. Or it's like wait a minute. We had one movie that probably not everybody saw where you had weeks to see Journey Smollett, so that gets more in your head, than somebody. Now, granted, we all know who Viola Davis is, but let's just say it's somebody like Andra Day, who's in a movie that maybe not everybody saw, but they saw Journey Smollett, weekly.
I didn't realize they did that.
They did that, and so like. That's a tough category because it's like, wait a minute, to some people who are home and don't have the money to go to the movie theaters and so forth, you're probably going to stick with the one who was in your head every week, as opposed to like an actress like an Andra Day, who you may not follow her music and you may not have seen her film, and then you got somebody like Michaela Coel, who you may have not have seen her previous week, but you probably saw her every week on an HBO series.
So wait a minute, but I think you raised a really good point because I was hoping somebody would bring up, what is the show called, Mayor of Easttown? Yeah. I saw on social media everybody watched it. I never watched it. I mean, and not that I didn't watch it because I didn't want to watch it. It just I was like, what was my appeal? My appeal wasn't going to be because everybody else was watching it. I'm looking at content to find out what's hot, for me. So I never watched it. I mean, but I understand that it was very popular. I saw you tweeting about it or posting something.
And I don't usually, and I go, it was a series that week after week captivated your attention. It's a murder mystery. every week was like, whoa, whoa, you know what I'm saying? And like, that's not easy to pull off. You can either talk about a series because of a performance, or you can talk about the writing. The writing was good enough that it kept you as an audience like, I got to see it next week. And that's, you know, sometimes that's the benefit now, as much as we've been having a lot of streaming shows where a weekly series pays off because we become more invested. You know, when you're watching a streaming show, it's hard now to just try to stay home and watch one series all in one day. You know, like you can't really try to fit in 7 hours in one day, you know, so you have to break it up and chew it. And when you do so, you're not so much thinking about episode 4 because it goes on. Let's just say Netflix, you know, those episodes come without you finishing up the credits, you know, and so like when you're on a streaming show where all the episodes are airing, it's hard to pay attention to like what happened on episode 3 because they just come straight at you. Whereas when you have a weekly show, you've got time to be involved, to fester it, you know, to like let it fester actually, and you're like, that was really good, you know, and for a new audience, like who like maybe like yourself who hasn't caught up, you know, but now that's over, you can say, oh, there's plenty of time for you to catch up as to what's going on because it's not over yet, you know, and so like now I think the theory is a lot more people want to do 10 episodes as opposed to 15 or 20.
So wait a minute. So Charles hasn't weighed in, but my point to you was that one of the things that always bothers me every year about what the television academies constantly do is that there are these shows that, you know, that always catch fire. And as an aside, I remember being in a movie theater, like back in the good old days, pre-pandemic, and having a conversation with a group of critics. And all of us now in this multi-hundred, you know, streaming service world that we live in, we were all talking about shows that we liked. And it was like 10 of us there. And all of us had like our favorite 5 or 10 shows. And none of us had watched anybody else's shows. Like I had my favorite shows, nobody's seen them. The next guy next to me, he had his favorite shows, nobody's seen them. So I get a little suspicious when you have like what the Television Academy is going to do, where they try to force certain shows on you. And Wilson, you and I have had this conversation. We'll see certain shows that win Emmys, and you're like, man, I never watched it, man. And then I never heard of it. I've never. And
we're like, we're in the minority. I guess we are in the. It's no different, and I may be segueing differently. Is like when we are as critics, you know, do not like any of Tyler Perry's products, but yet the numbers that he brings in tells us we are in the minority.
Somebody's watching them.
You know what I'm saying? So when we're grading his movies and shows like 1 star, and I'm not saying I do it, but like, you know, the numbers tell you know, like when you go to Rotten Tomatoes and you see what the grade is on the show or the movie, it's like, oh, it's a 28%, blah, blah. But then when you see like the reports that come out, like, oh, he's still one of the highest, his shows are still highly rated. I remember when he had his shows on TNT or TBS, and they were averaging like a 4 or 5.3 rating, which is high on cable television as opposed to network, you know? So on every other show that's more popular are trying to struggle to get that 3 rating, he was averaging 4 or 5. So there's a lot of people that watch his shows that were like, and they won't admit to it probably, but there's a lot of people that watch his shows and we're like in a minority, like who are we to tell them anything different? Because they're gonna watch it, you know? So they,
you know, coming from a psychological background, there was always this theory that there's individual differences in responding to stimuli. What you see reacts differently for you than how it acts for me. So we can all have these shows that we all love and watch all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean that what I like is what you like and what you like is what somebody else likes. But that's the whole point, is that there's some people out there that get these academies together and they all vote and say, the majority of us believe that Mayor of Easttown is the best out there. Not everybody, even in those same organizations, agrees with that because everybody votes differently. So then it comes out and you say, I never watched that show, but guess what? Now that it's been nominated, I'm going to go watch it. It happened last year. I think with Ted Lasso, a lot of people had never seen Ted Lasso, but it started winning all these awards and people were like, hey, I need to go watch Ted Lasso, and and people enjoyed Ted Lasso.
That's why people like these award shows, like specifically the Golden Globes, because the Golden Globes are notorious for like bringing in the newcomers, and a lot of people want that because they figure if you're a new show, none of this whole you have to pay your dues. You get in as a new show, you get that audience because at the end of the day, you want to be amongst the five, Everybody wants a nomination of sorts that brings in visibility because one person, and it's never just one person, it's a whole team. If it's an actor, it's her agent, it's her manager, it's the producers of the show who cast that person, everybody wins. It's never just one person that the nomination goes to one person. Overall, it's a lot of people that got that person the nomination and they want that visibility. Winning is extra,
Yep.
But you can land amongst the top five. Obviously, everybody's going to write you up. They're all going to be looking at your name. They're all going to be Googling your name to see what you've done and so forth. But moving on, I know we got films to talk about. They're out right now.
We got films to talk about, man. And I'm glad, Wilson, that was a wonderful segue. Wilson is the one guest that we have on a consistent basis who actually has done the show enough that he kind of understands that he can actually go into his point and then transition to the next thing. Wilson, you the man. That's what I miss you. Charles hasn't gotten there yet. He hasn't spent enough time.
He's not me.
He's not there yet, man. But
individual differences in responding to stimuli. Okay,
that's why I say like De Niro, individual achievement you don't have yet.
All right. Well, we're gonna lead off because we got 3 movies this weekend. The first one I want to talk about is a film that I saw at a physical screening, probably one of the first or second movies I saw when we came back, which was a Sundance darling. And the film is simply called Zola, which is a biographical comedy drama directed by, and let me see if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Is it Jangza? Well, I'm saying I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. Can you help me, or are you just gonna sit there and make faces, Wilson Morales?
Well, considering you've had time since this is your show to find how to pronounce a name, I'm going to blame you on that one. You're like, yo, you didn't look at any videos. Her name is
not. I did not.
Janitza Bravo.
Okay, yeah, what Wilson just said. From a screenplay by Bravo and Jeremy Harris, and it's based on a viral Twitter thread by is it Isaiah Zola King, and the resulting Rolling Stone article, Zola Tells All, the real story behind the greatest stripper saga ever tweeted by David Kushner. The film, of course, stars Taylor Page. A lot of people remember her. A couple of films she's done, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and what was the other film, the basketball film?
Nobody really saw it. It's called Boogie.
Thank you, Boogie. Wow. Again, Wilson just gonna let me struggle. He knew what I was going with this. Taylor Page, who plays a part-time stripper who's convinced by her new friend, played by Riley Keough. I was trying to remember her name because it's not there. To travel to Tampa, Florida from Detroit in order to earn money, only to get in over her head. That's a good description for what we watch on screen. In the story, which I will start with, because Wilson, I know you've seen this film at Sundance. This woman, Taylor Page's character, Zola, is working as a waitress in a kind of a, I don't know, not Cracker. Well, it could be a Cracker Barrel or, one of those sorts of restaurants. And she waits on a customer one day, and it's this really brass young white woman who's with this older black dude. And she pulls her to the side and goes, girl, I'm a stripper. You want to get some of this hot money, you and I need to go out here and go stripping. So of course, sure, why not? And before you know it, she goes, what are you looking at me like that? That's what happens?
No, I'm saying you as an audience member, you're like, really? You going?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant like I was explaining it incorrectly. No, okay. So the next thing you know, she goes, I got this thing that I do down in Tampa. You should ride with me. We should go down there. We should get this shmoney, right? Next thing you know, again, another Wilson, make the face for the audience.
Word? Like, really?
Thank you. And the next thing you know, She is getting picked up, and there's a black guy who's driving who simply goes by the name of X. And the boyfriend of the other stripper,
The white
who
one.
is kind of clueless, just you have to see the movie, please understand it. And the red lights are going off even before they left Detroit, but she does it anyway. And what an adventure this turns out to be. That it's stripping, prostitution, gorilla pimping. I mean, just all like craziness that's happening in this film, which I thought when I first came out of the theater, you know how the press is all, I mean, like the representative from the studios there, I was like, y'all, I said, this is a movie I could have watched as a streamer at home. I did not have to come to the theater to see this movie. But as I thought about it, it grew on me a little bit. I think Taylor Page and Coleman Domingo, who plays X in the film, the first time I've seen the two of them on screen together since Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Taylor Page, who had a small role in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, like you said, Wilson, and Boogie in this film. And there's something else Taylor Page has done recently that I've seen her in.
She was known for the VH1 series Hit the Floor.
Again, another show I never watched her in, but I saw her in something else. Taylor Page
she's done lots of things.
Her first come up was in a film called Gina the Joneses.
Okay, now that one I saw. Wilson, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. I see what you're doing there. You're trying to show us that we missed you for like 2 or 3 weeks by dropping these kind of.
Without me, how far does the show go? No, I'm just kidding.
But anyway, look at Charles.
Wait. Her first movie was High School Musical 3. That's where she really started.
Did anyone see her in that?
I did. I watched High School Musical 3.
What was her name? What was her character name? Did she have a prominent role, or was she just like a background?
She didn't have a prominent role.
Can I move on, man? Because y'all having a measuring.
And she was also in White Boy Rick.
Oh, and that's the other movie I saw her in, White Boy Rick. Thank you, Charles. See, Charles gets a point too. Ding, ding. But anyway, man, Zola is a wild ride. And the fact that it's based on a true story makes it even wilder. Taylor Page, I think, is going to get a lot of mileage out of this film. And I think this is the sort of film that, people put work on, you put your work out there like your resume. And I think the fact that she was able to execute a film like this, and I think do a really good job with it, along with Mrs. Bravo's performance, because when I wrote my review, I talked about how I loved her direction and I liked Page's performance. Really strong work for her in a film that is just bizarre and crazy, but it has an appeal. I gave it a B. I liked Zola. I thought Zola was wild, zany, and eccentric, and it worked for me. Charles, I'm gonna let you go first because I know Wilson has plenty to say about this film.
Wild and zany is mild to put it at best, I think. You could say madcap, you could say insane, you could say ludicrous. You wouldn't, if this were not based on a true story, you would never believe that this could happen the way that it did. And so it was definitely an adventure. I'm not sure if I liked it as much as Tim did. So, it was interesting to see. Now, actually, Zola was filmed before Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So this was, they did this before. So, it was, Coleman Domingo was, I don't know. If you want to say B, I would say maybe a C plus, B minus for me. It was an interesting movie. It definitely stays with you after you watch it. So for good or bad, but it gave us, like you said, a resume performance for Taylor Page and Riley Keough.
Wilson Morales.
Coleman is the best thing in the movie. He was so showy that you just kind of waited for him to, every time he spoke, you wanted to hang on his words. Let's mention also in a small role, Jason Mitchell. It's sort of like, I guess when this movie was being made, he was the bigger name as he was rising up, but things have, changed throughout the years. But it is I don't say a career-making performance. It's a showy performance for Taylor Page. I would give it like a B minus, only because I said to myself, okay, what's the actual plot? You know, where are we going with this? Nicholas Braun, who plays the boyfriend, like, even though I'm hearing it's based on a true story, like, what was his purpose? You know, if you think about Coleman's character, you're like, how do you bring this guy to the trip, knowing what you want his girl to do? You know, and this guy's like, what did you expect this guy to do? Like, y'all go, you know, as Coleman Domingo's character, you're going to Florida for work. Where does this guy come into the picture? You know, and you're wondering, like, what is going on here? And like, you know, when it ended the way it did, I was like, is this really true? Because it could have gone any other direction, but you know, who knows how many endings they had that would have played well. Because sometimes it could be a true story, and then you you embellish a little bit for the screen to have a satisfactory ending. Riley Keough, you know, she's been in the game for over 10 years. And for a lot of people who don't know, she's the daughter of Lisa Marie Presley and the granddaughter of Elvis Presley, you know. And so, like, not that matters. So she's definitely come into her own over the years. And so, like, this is another showstopper, because I guess on film, she hasn't stood out, but this movie will for her, you know. So I think, and for Jessica Bravo, hey, you know, I like her direction. I want to see more of what she can do. She directed an earlier film called Lemon, totally different. So, which is a good thing, because I don't know if I know what her style is, which is good, because you want to see what's next coming out of her. You know, she's directed other episodes of television, but you want to see, like, oh, give her more work. Let's see what she can do. Let her keep growing as a director as she gets more money in terms of the budget, because sometimes you can grow based on the budget you get, you know, on a film, you know, and you can have a bigger vision than what you're holding with. And so let's see where it goes.
Got it. All right. So so that movie is currently I think it's in theaters. Is it streaming anywhere?
I don't think so. I think it's only.
Yeah, I think it's only theaters. All right, just checking. All right, so we're going to move on to a film that is absolutely streaming and on Amazon, is The Tomorrow War, which is a military sci-fi action film directed by Chris McKay, who many people will remember directed the Lego Movie, and his live action directorial debut. This film stars, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, Chris Pratt, who... I'll say it in a minute, man, because, you know, these guys are so interchangeable. Like, Ryan Reynolds could have played this role. Chris Pratt could have played this role. Who is Star-Lord? Oh, Chris Pratt is Star-Lord. So these roles are so interchangeable, because I kept looking at them going, Ryan Reynolds could have did that. That's the same thing Reynolds would have done. That's what I'm saying. The film stars Chris Pratt, who also executive produced, Yvonne the woman from Chuck. Again, Wilson is getting on me because I can't pronounce these names. I don't want to mess them up. J.K. Simmons, Betty Gilpin, and it follows a mix of present-day soldiers and civilians sent into the future to fight an alien army. Now, on this film, I will say that the premise of it, to me, is pretty interesting as a sci-fi premise, right? Movie starts, the character played by Chris Pratt has recently been turned down from a prestigious job he really wants. He's a little sad and disappointed. And suddenly they're watching the World Cup. And in the middle of a World Cup game, and in the middle of a breakaway of all things, the sky opens up and soldiers from the future come in and announce to the stadium, mind you, which was a flaw to me, like, you had no PA system. You just stood in front of the stadium for like millions of people and went, we're from the future, we're fighting a war against aliens, and they're about to wipe us out, and we need you. And I was like, that's how we start, and that's it. But again, that leads to a worldwide draft, and everybody gets to serve in this war for a period of a week. And there's a lot of science involved that I can explain, but we just be wasting time, taking up review time. But let's just basically say that his character, the character that Chris Pratt plays, his last name is Forrester, gets sucked into from 2021 to 2051, where they're fighting a battle against these aliens called what were they called? The white
spikes.
White spikes. Thank you. That are literally on the verge of obliterating mankind. I think there are only like 500,000 humans left when they arrive to fight them. And there's a general or a colonel, excuse me, who is leading the battle, who may or may not have, who may come up with a solution, but may be tied to the original character without giving that away. I thought the premise to me was much more interesting than the overall execution of the movie. And I just watched the movie again last night. I think, is it entertaining? Yeah. Is it action-packed? Yeah. Does it have aliens that, are sort of kind of different? I mean, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. We watched enough of these movies. You can't really make aliens too original because we've seen too many aliens in too many different movies. I just thought that the premise, I think, worked better than the actual movie did. I would give it a C+. And like I said, when I watched Chris Pratt, I swear to you, my mind, I guess since I just watched Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, that Ryan Reynolds is stuck in my head. But the two of them almost look like they could do the same things to me. And it's going to be interesting when Deadpool comes into the MCU, and if Guardians and Deadpool at some point have to mix, and you'll see as Charles keeps shaking his head like, no. Yes, they literally can play the same roles. If you took Pratt out of some roles and put Reynolds in, you wouldn't miss a beat. So Wilson, so that's my review. I'd give it a C+. Wilson Morales, I'll start with you this time.
I'd say, I'd probably give it like a B minus. I thought it was solid. The movie is somewhat like a hybrid of Starship Troopers meets the Terminator. You think about it. You remember the creatures in Starship Troopers are like the creatures in this movie, and when you talk about like the future is coming down to the past saying we need your help, it's almost like if you had to do another Terminator, you could use this plot line where it's like the future comes down and you bring them back up, to fight. When you think of the Terminator plot,
right?
Instead of and Tim notoriously forgot the other brothers and sisters in the movie that have some good prominent roles, like Sam.
Tim left that for you to talk about it. I knew you're BlackFilmandTV.
It's like he forgot Jasmine Matthews, Sam Richardson, Keith Powers, Edwin Hodge. There's a little bit 4 people out there. You're like, they're on the poster, brother.
I knew we have a panel of people talking about these movies. I don't have to hit every salient point. That's why you guys are here.
Betty Gilpin. I'm like, wow, he just threw her. like she in the beginning. Wow. He's like, yo. Wow. But anyway.
Thank you, Wilson, for bringing those people up.
And it's, they're not playing like the soldiers who get killed in the background, like, oh, they just threw them in there and then we're going to see them die later. They got some good prominent roles in there, especially
I'm going to die my way.
Like Sam Richardson is known for his comedic performances in other places, and he kind of brings that here. So it's kind of good to see him mesh with that. He's also got another movie that's out called The Werewolves Within, which is a funny movie. This is his month. And like I said, it's like, you think about Independence Day, which they keep running now because it's a classic, and you never know what's gonna play out, over time. And I think this was originally maybe a Paramount film that went to Amazon,
right?
Because Amazon was not in the business of trying to spend $100 million on making a movie, nearly a year and a half ago. And so I think this was a Paramount film and they farmed it off. And I think it could have done well in the theater. Sometimes you gotta, hey, Chris Pratt is a name, he does sell. He does well with these action movies, as evidenced by Guardians of the Galaxy and the Jurassic World films, and it would have been a good spotlight on the other characters in there to give them some shine. That, if the movie makes money, they shine. They get better work, they will open the doors for others, In the end, the ending was a little silly, but I didn't mind it. It went longer than I thought it should have. But nevertheless, I think I like the overall effect as far as where it's going, especially the somewhat twist you kind of saw, but you wanted to see how it played out, So, like I said before, I give it basically a B minus.
Charles Kirkland.
I'll have to go with Wilson on this one. I think it's probably gonna be a B minus of a film. But let me first say this: Chris Pratt is not interchangeable with Ryan Reynolds. I mean, because Pratt's performance in this is nowhere the tongue-in-cheek kind of thing that Ryan Reynolds is known for, that he does with Deadpool. This is actually, he does I think a pretty decent job as his action hero in this film. And there was some talk about, this being the third, him being able to helm 3 franchises. I don't see how they're going to get a franchise out of this movie. I mean, it's possible, but there's so many plot holes and inconsistencies in the film. I mean, that because if I were in the Time Variance Authority, I would have to come and wipe out a whole bunch of things that happened in this film. So I like the movie. As a matter of fact, it was the action that got me on the film. I thought it was actually very well done, and the creatures were exciting, interesting, and scary all at the same time. And I thought it was a pretty good film. And matter of fact, I thought it was better than something that I saw in the theaters. It just happened. I got a sneak preview of in the last week, which we won't talk about until next week. So I enjoyed the Tomorrow War. Okay. So I give it a B minus.
All right, cool. Which takes us to our last movie today. And if you listened to last week's show, I actually reviewed this movie a week early because I wanted people to be able to listen to the show last week to prepare for it on Friday. And of course, that's Summer of Soul. This film, of course, is a documentary directed by Amir Thompson, aka Questlove, and it tells the story of the 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival. This film, of course, world premiered back in January when Wilson, who's the only person here, got a chance to go to Sundance. It was released this Friday or this weekend for our show's purposes. I talked about this movie ad nauseum last week, and I literally just watched it, and it finished probably about a half an hour before we went on the air again. The only thing I'll say, and I'm going to let you guys just take this one, is that the thing that to me separates this from a Watt Stacks, which separates it from Amazing Grace, which separates it from Mr. Soul, which was another documentary by Melissa Hazlett that came out last year, is that what they did successfully, or what Questlove did, which I loved, is that we see the performances in the concert. We actually see some of the artists that performed now kind of talking about the impact of what it meant in 1969. But the big piece that I think they really got right was the mood of not just the people of Harlem, but the mood of Black people in America during the time, with this being 1 year removed from the assassination of Martin Luther King, several years removed from the assassination of Malcolm X, and that sense of revolutionary bubbling under the surface, the Black Panther Party coming into being in 1966. You had all the stuff around Vietnam, all of the instability in the country, and all that is captured in the film. As you have they interview several of the principals that were there, talking about it, to use the line that Al Sharpton uses. 1969 was the year that the Negro died. People stopped saying Negro, and we became Black. And I think that social element of the film, to me, elevates it to like one of the best music docs I've ever seen. I mean, because it has an element that not just ties into the movie, but the movie representing a period, right? So I give this movie, I think last week, did I give it an A last week?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I'm gonna elevate that to A+ this week, because after watching it several more times, it's amazing. And then the performances, to see Sly and the Family Stone, Stevie Wonder, B.B. King, David Ruffin shows up and makes an appearance. The Fifth Dimension. I mean, it's a time capsule movie. Which the other part that I talked about last week is the fact that it happened literally at the same time that Woodstock was happening, and Woodstock is in our lexicon. Everybody knows about it, and the fact that we have to figure out 52 years later that here's this story tells you all you need to know. A+, for Summer of Soul. Charles, I'll go to you first on this one. What do you think?
I'm gonna say I rated the movie last week and I watched it again this week, and I'm just gonna have to say I hated everything about this movie. I thought it was like the worst piece of thing that has ever been made because there was no action, there was no violence. You know, I was this a true story? Did they make this up? That people actually got along back in the 60s? That black people actually loved each other? Come on, I'm not believing that. Okay, I'm kidding. I gave it an A+ last week. I love this film.
You saw Wilson. I was looking at you. I'm like, yo, what are you talking about? What?
You are no comedian.
Yeah, man, you got to work on your timing, man. Because we were sitting there like,
I know. I saw
really
you
trying to make a joke out of this.
That's exactly exactly what I was going for. This movie is excellent. I talked about it last week, and I can't say it again. It just it's astounding that this occurred and nobody ever talked about it. And you know, the most interesting part about it was I heard an interview with Questlove. He said that after he showed this film, he had like 5 or 6 other people who came up and said, "Hey man, I got some films too. I some other concerts that nobody ever talked about." So he's getting ready to make Summer of Soul 2, 3, 4 because he's already said I've been inundated with tapes of other concerts that just have never been talked about. The same experience where people are just getting together and having a good time, and nobody's getting hurt, nobody's getting killed. It's just love. And so this movie is just pure black joy, pure black love, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Wilson Morales.
You know, you guys were born around this time period. You know, I wasn't. You know, you guys are several years older than me, so you know those players.
Man.
I'm gonna get to it. You know, so for me, growing up, you know, it's like you hear of these names, but I wasn't. You know, I certainly wasn't young enough, old enough to experience them in their prime. And when I saw this, you know, at Sundance on a big screen, you know, it was definitely felt like being at a concert. So for anybody who's watching this, go see it in the theaters. You know, you look at these names now, it's like Abby Lincoln, you know, we don't hear so much about. You know, I've always heard about Sly and Family Stone. But growing up, you know, I didn't see that many videos, you know, and you may hear the music, but to see them actually perform in their prime the way they do, it's a whole nother story than just hearing a song. You know, to see Nina Simone up in there, you know, to see young Gladys Knight with the Pips, you know, it's like now because of, you know, videos and internet, you can go back and see them, but like, and to know that this was lying around and you look at the audience, you know, like I'm in Manhattan, you guys are not, you know, I mean, at least I'm in New York City. And I go, Marcus Garvey Park is not the same as it was back then. I'm sure, you know, back then, 50 years ago, I'm sure they didn't line streets and parks, and you see that sea of crowd out there, you know. And when you see them when Eddie Kendricks comes up and you see them pushing to get up, you know, near the stage, you know, no drama, you know, and you're like, how is it that you have all these acts and nobody wanted to show it like 30 years later, 40 years later? You know, nobody just put the bid into this, you know, and just know that these people came to Harlem and sang these songs. And, you know, like you said, Tim, the stuff that was going on around 1969, you know, with the deaths that happened with the years before that, you know, and sometimes music brings out, you know, a calmness in people, you know, and that's what this did, you know, and I think hopefully we can get more of this, where we see people in their prime, because, you know, to see Sly, I can't recall, maybe you guys seeing another documentary with Sly and Family Stone. The way he performed and the way they talk about it, where like, oh yeah, this one guy, he's white in the background. It's like the way they dressed up with their costumes, you know, like you could never figure it out. Like everybody else, I like what they did. It was like, oh, everybody else is wearing suits back then. Now Sly was like, now we're gonna wear different colors. We're gonna have our hair out, you know, stuff like that, you know, to see Mahalia Jackson, you know, out there. Like he had it all, you know. It was like way before rap, you had these all sorts of music in this. He had, you know, the Latino music in there, you know. It's like, You had it all in there. I think it's one. I can say now it's probably going to be one of the top 10 films of the year, only because, like you said, you can see this over and over again and chill, and be like, hey, play it on the screen, like even in the background when sometimes you have your TV on and you have some procedural drama on because you've seen it playing some. You can play this because you just want to hear the music.
Now, the one thing that I talked about last week and what I called almost my Summer of Soul rant, because I was so excited of wanting to promote this movie. The fact that Stevie Wonder, when you watch this documentary, he's 19 years old in this. He opens and then he performs again later on. So they show a performance of him early, but then later when he's on, he credits and he talked about that during this time period. And I think Chris Rock comes on and talks a little bit about this briefly, as Stevie was in this really weird period, right, at Motown, where he easily could have just been like, for the rest of his career at 1969, like, I could just cruise off my old Motown catalog, but like there's something else underneath that, and I want to explore that. And he talked about how that event in Harlem, from a political standpoint, kind of galvanized him throughout the 1970s, which would be a great documentary upon itself to see. Talking Book, Music of My Mind, Inner Vision, Fulfilling This First Finale, Songs in the Key of Life. All of that stuff happened in the 70s within about a less than decade span after this documentary. And you're right, Wilson. I mean, again, we tease you a lot because you always want to hit us with, oh man, you guys are older than me. For me, watching this documentary would be like if somebody said, hey man, we found a tape of a performance from the golden age of jazz, the golden year of jazz, 1959. And there's Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, and all these heavyweights. If they had a concert like that, do you realize I'll be sitting there like, wow.
It reminded me.
For all I know, it might exist someplace and somebody hasn't found it yet. It may be out there.
It reminded me of Dave Chappelle's Block Party.
Yeah.
That was another good one. I mean, but but my point is, man, and I think you talked about it now. You said it's called Marcus Garvey Park now, formerly Mount Garvey Park. Wow. Yeah, that is
small. It's I went there 2 weeks ago. They screened it in New York City with a performance after the screening by Gladys Knight, by Marilyn McCool and Billy Davis of the Fifth Dimension. So like, people stuck around because like, it's 50 years later, and Gladys Knight is still performing, and you look to see, you wonder like how young were these people? Because even if they were in their 30s, now you can't say that.
Well, Gladys Knight had to be in her 20s because she's 70 something now.
Yeah. Everybody's got to be 70.
Yeah,
everybody's got to be 70. You say 20, even if you go as low as 20, they're 71, and some of them weren't in their 20s. So a lot of them are like in their mid 70s, early 80s.
Well, Sly is still here. There's several. Stevie Wonder's still here. Stevie Wonder was 19, so to my point, he's 70, 71 now. But I will close by just saying this, and I agree with Wilson. I have not seen it on the big screen yet, but I definitely want to. You have got to see this movie. I know we've talked about The Tomorrow War and Zola. Great movies, Keough. This is the movie to see this weekend. If you see one movie this weekend, whether it's at home on Hulu or it's in the big screen, go check out Summer of Soul. Absolutely fantastic documentary.
I want to see if you can see the background. Can you see this?
Is that the line? Yeah. I knew Wilson was going to pull a fast one. He was going to show us the lineup.
It's like, it's an amazing, obviously I got the shirt. I'm like,
you don't need to be twerking on the screen, man. Just turn around and sit down, man.
Don't hate.
All right, man. So we're going to get on out of here, man. Welcome back, Wilson. Thank you. That was actually great today, man. And it was great that we had that movie that I really wanted to talk about again. Charles Kirkland Jr. It's always a pleasure, man, to sit down and talk movies with you. And as we say to you guys every week in closing, please see something good at the movies. And I implore you, please, please, please support Questlove's documentary, Summer of Soul. You will not be disappointed if you haven't seen this movie. Until next week, enjoy your holiday. Wilson, Charles, thank you guys for everything you do. And we'll see you guys on the other side. You guys take care.
See you later.